You know that person who's just different from everyone else in the room. Not in an obvious way, not in a way they're advertising. They don't come up to you with the topic ready to go. They don't ask what you've been up to. Don't comment on the weather. Don't fill the air with words just to avoid the quiet. They're not checking their phone every 30 seconds to look busy. They're not scanning the room for someone to latch onto. Everyone else around them is doing that thing people do, working overtime to not feel awkward. And this person is just sitting there, completely at ease with the silence. Like silence was never the problem to begin with. If any part of that sounds like you, stay with me, because there's something specific about the way these people move through the world, something that most people read completely wrong the moment they encounter it. And the misread isn't small. It shapes how people treat them, how they get left out of things, how they develop a reputation they never asked for and never really fit. And once you understand what's actually going on underneath that stillness, the way you see them, or the way you see yourself, shifts in a way that's hard to undo. We'll get there, but first, let's be honest about who we're actually talking about. They're the coworker who shows up, does excellent work, and leaves without announcing it. Or the classmate who sits through the whole semester, never raises their hand, and then says something in a group project that makes everyone go quiet for a second. The friend who never texts first, but always picks up when you call. The person at a social gathering who finds one corner, stays there, and somehow manages to have the most surprisingly real conversation of the night, but only if you walked over first. They won't chase you down, they won't perform enthusiasm, but once you're in, you realize pretty fast that there's a whole person in there, one who is paying attention to everything the whole time you thought they weren't. They're also, almost universally, the ones who stay out of drama, not because they don't notice it, they notice everything, but because getting involved costs something they're not willing to spend. No opinions on the office gossip, no commentary on what someone heard about someone else in the group chat, no sides taken and arguments that don't concern them, no viral hot takes, just a quiet, steady presence that somehow makes everyone else's noise feel a little louder by contrast. And that stillness tends to make people uncomfortable, because most of us have been conditioned to read silence as a signal, as rejection or coldness or judgment. We assume that if someone isn't actively broadcasting their personality at us, something must be off. That assumption says a lot more about us than it does about them. But here's the thing, that discomfort, it's ours, not theirs. When someone doesn't reach out to you first, the brain does something automatic. It fills the gap with a story. And the story is almost never neutral. It's they don't like me, or they think they're better than me, or the slightly more generous version, they're just shy. But none of those usually land quite right either, because shy implies some internal struggle with wanting to connect but not being able to. A shy person wants to talk to you and freezes. This person, they're not frozen. They're just not particularly moved to fill the air with words that don't mean anything. What's actually going on is something more like a very deliberate management of energy. These people have noticed, often from a pretty young age, that social interaction, even good social interaction, requires something of them. Not in a dramatic way, just in a real way. The same way a long run or a hard conversation leaves you needing to sit quietly for a while after. It's not that they hate people, it's that engaging fully and authentically takes real bandwidth, and they've stopped pretending otherwise. At some point, they made a quiet, probably unconscious decision. If they were going to show up for people, they wanted it to actually mean something. So they stopped being the ones who walk up to strangers at parties just to fill space. They stopped sending, "Hey, how are you?" texts they don't actually mean. They stopped performing availability they don't have. And honestly, that's not coldness, that's clarity. Which raises a question worth sitting with for a second. How often do we actually mistake honesty for distance? If you've ever been the person in the room who goes quiet when everyone else is loud, or if you know someone like that and have wondered what's actually going on inside them, drop it in the comments. And if this kind of psychology is the stuff you find yourself coming back to, subscribing means you won't miss the next one. There's a specific kind of peace that people like this have built for themselves, and it looks, from the outside, a lot like isolation. They like their place, they're comfortable eating alone. They don't need the weekend to be packed with plans to feel like it counted. A quiet Sunday that goes nowhere, that produces nothing, that involves no one, that's not a failure to them. That's actually the goal. And in a culture that treats busyness and sociability like virtues, that kind of contentment reads as suspicious, like there must be something wrong with someone who isn't constantly trying to be somewhere or with someone. But what they've actually done is build a life that doesn't constantly demand they be something they're not. The bubble isn't a wall they hid behind after getting hurt, though sometimes that's part of it. More often, it's just the shape their life naturally took when they stopped filling it with noise out of obligation. They said no to enough things that didn't feel right, and eventually what was left was a life that actually fit them. They kept the things that felt real, a few close people, the routines that ground them, and the silence that doesn't need to be fixed. This is why when you do get past the surface with someone like this, it tends to feel different from most conversations. They're not giving you a performance. They're not managing impressions or calculating what to say next. They've been watching and thinking and processing long before you walked over, and now they're just talking directly, without the social packaging most of us wrap everything in. That directness can feel disarming, sometimes even a little intense, but it's real in a way that small talk just isn't. And most people, once they experience it, don't really want to go back to the surface stuff. Here's something that tends to surprise people. The ones who seem most indifferent to your presence are often the ones paying the most attention. They just don't announce it. They notice the thing you said last month that you probably forgot you said. They catch the shift in your tone before you realize your tone has shifted. They remember the small detail you mentioned once, casually, and they'll bring it back up weeks later like it mattered, because to them, it did. They're not checked out. They're just quiet about what they're taking in. And the not wanting to bother anyone thing, that's real too, and it goes deeper than just politeness. A lot of these people operate with an almost hyperactive awareness of whether they're imposing on someone. They won't call you just to talk because they'll spend the whole time wondering if you actually had time for that call. They won't show up unannounced. They won't overstay. They'll leave before you have the chance to feel like you need them to leave. It's not indifference to you, it's actually the opposite. It's a constant, quiet consideration of your space and your time that most people never think to extend. The irony is that this same quality, that not wanting to impose, is exactly what makes them seem like they don't care. Because from the outside, reaching out looks like interest, and not reaching out looks like absence. But for someone built this way, not reaching out is the consideration. It's, I don't want to be in your way. It's, I'll be here when you need me, but I won't demand anything from you in the meantime, which is its own kind of love if you know how to read it. And most people never learn to read it, so they just write these people off as cold and miss out on one of the most solid kinds of connection there is. Getting to know someone like this is genuinely slow. There's no shortcut. You start the conversation, maybe a few times. You sit in the silence without making it weird. You don't push. You don't try to crack them open like a puzzle. You don't push for more than they're offering. And one day, you look up and realize they told you something real, something they probably don't tell most people, and they said it so casually you almost missed it. That's the thing about them. They don't announce the important stuff. They just say it and trust you to catch it. That's how it goes with them, slowly, quietly. And once you're one of the actual few people they keep close, you start to see what everyone else in the room has been reading as coldness for what it actually is. It's discernment. It's a person who figured out pretty early that not everyone deserves access to all of them, and who has never really felt the need to apologize for that. They're not building walls, they're just not leaving the door wide open for everyone who passes by. They're not closed off, they're selective. And there's a version of that kind of selectiveness that, when it finally lets you in, feels a lot like being chosen. The video right there on your screen goes into something that connects directly to all of this: why certain people opt out of visibility entirely, even when the world keeps telling them to show up louder. Watch it next.